Hook, they were once a united royal family, duty-bound, elegant, unshakable. But then, cracks began to form. Camilla finds herself sidelined from the inner circle. Kate is thrust forward as the new Diana, unaware of the role she's playing. William harbors plans no one dares question. And Charles, trapped between his wife and his heir. Scandals erupt, secrets leak, trust shatters. Behind the polished royal smiles lies a web of political daggers cloaked in silk. When the clash between Camilla, William, and Kate ignites behind closed doors, one question remains: can the British monarchy preserve its crown or merely its facade? A quiet June afternoon drifted by, marked only by the patient ticking of an antique clock in the reading room of Clarence's house. Lavender petals by the window trembled in a gentle breeze, their soft fragrance seeming to promise calm for any restless heart. But Camilla felt no peace. Before her lay a dossier stamped confidential, internal. Delivered by her secretary at noon, with a polite, emotionless smile and the words budget updates as directed by the Office of the Prince of Wales. She hadn't thought much of it. Budget revisions were routine, especially with a new fiscal year approaching. A few minor cuts were expected, but on page 5 her eyes froze. Annabelle's name was gone from the payroll. Annabelle Elliot, her trusted sister, her silent confidant, the backbone behind Camilla's every move for over 30 years. No longer funded by the royal budget. No prior notice. No explanation noted. Not a single word. Camilla blinked. Once. Twice. But the cold text remained. The truth was as sharp as a honed blade slicing through trust. She left the room like a sleepwalker clutching the dossier. She needed answers. She needed to know who did this and why. Her heels echoed on the marble corridor. Servants bowed, but she barely noticed. Her mind was fixed on one destination, Charles's study. He was there as always, surrounded by papers peering through familiar reading glasses. When he saw her, his eyes flickered with unease. Camilla didn't mince words. She dropped the dossier on his desk, the page with Annabelle's erased name glaring up at him. "How do you explain this?" Her voice was low but icy. Charles glanced down, then away. A heavy silence stretched between them, bitter and thick. "I know," he exhaled, almost a whisper. William signed off on it. The air in the room seemed to solidify. Camilla gripped the chair, her knuckles whitening. "William," she repeated, incredulous. "He has the authority to cut Annabelle without consultation." Charles dodged her gaze. He twirled his pen, eyes drifting to nowhere, seeking salvation in the void. "I can't interfere in everything, Camilla," he said hesitantly. "This is a transitional phase. William wants to review everything. And he starts by cutting my sister from the budget," her voice hissed through clenched teeth. "By severing those loyal to me." Charles said nothing. His eyes fled, searching for an escape. She understood. He was afraid. Afraid to confront William, afraid to fracture the stable royal image he'd painstakingly built since Elizabeth's death. But in his cowardice, Camilla knew she'd been abandoned. She turned away, her heart pounding. The betrayal wasn't just the decision, it was the silent complicity of the man before her. She remembered Annabelle's sleepless nights planning events, perfecting protocols, shielding Camilla from the relentless waves of public scorn. Annabelle wasn't just an advisor. She was family, her last bastion against a crumbling world. And now that bastion had been erased with a single stroke. As the door closed behind her, Charles finally exhaled. He shut his eyes. Deep down, he knew his silence came at a steep cost. Back in the empty room, Camilla stared at the cold printed pages. White paper, black ink, but to her it was blood. The blood of loyalty, the blood of trust betrayed. William wasn't just reforming, he was purging. Quietly, swiftly, calculatedly. Camilla closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her lids, memories of being branded, the other woman flooded back. The venomous whispers, the contemptuous stares, the resilience it took to survive. She'd endured it all, and she wouldn't let a crown-wearing heir reduce her to a budget cut. The Western meeting room at Kensington Palace remained sealed for 3 hours that morning. No press releases, no logged schedules in the royal public records. Only a handful of senior aides were permitted entry. William sat at the head of the table, dressed simply, pale blue shirt, dark blazer, but his eyes carried an undeniable authority. He was wielding power. Across from him sat Harry Aubrey Fletcher, and William Van Cutsem, childhood friends, loyal witnesses at his wedding. Not government officials, not seasoned PR advisors, but William's chosen allies. He had summoned them. He had set the agenda. We need to reshape the inner workings leaner, more transparent. But above all, it must show who's leading this new era, William said, tapping a personnel chart. I don't need people stuck in the old ways. I need those who understand me, who are loyal to me, and who know what we're fighting for. The meeting ended with a firm handshake. No public statement followed, but hours later, the Prince of Wales's official Instagram posted a photo. William, Harry, and Van Cutsem standing together in Windsor's afternoon light, their expressions resolute yet warm. The caption was brief. A new vision, an old trust. No titles listed, no further words needed. To observers, it signaled a shift. To insiders, it was a silent declaration of war. Camilla was at Sandringham when her media aide sent the photo. She rarely followed social media, but when the image appeared on her phone, she paused. 3 men, 1 prince, 2 seemingly harmless faces. Camilla frowned. She'd met them before at family events. But something felt off. A familiar unease stirred a sense of being pushed out of the trusted circle. She retreated to her room, opening a private file drawer filled with decades of notes. Annabelle's meticulous records, post-Diana divorce media reports, old connections long buried. And then she found it. Harry Aubrey Fletcher had been a strategic partner in a freelance PR group formed by Diana's close friend in 1995, designed to craft Diana's independent image after her split from Charles. William Van Cutsem, though discreet, was related to a journalist who'd penned Diana's biography and openly criticized Camilla in 2000's editorials. Camilla closed the file. Her fingers tapped the leather cover, pensive. Not random. Not a coincidence, she murmured, her eyes heavy. A question echoed in her mind unanswered. Was William finishing what Diana couldn't? That evening, Camilla sought Charles, but he'd left to consult privately with his son's office. Once again, Charles slipped away, leaving her to face a sharpening reality: she was being isolated. She returned to her room, lit a small candle, an old habit to think, to feel, to decide. If William was reshaping the monarchy in his mother's image, this wasn't reform. It was a purge. A meticulous erasure of Camilla's influence, one step, one person at a time. She lit another candle, not for calm, but for clarity. From a drawer, she pulled a small wooden box containing Annabelle's notes, names to watch, personnel shifts, even William's meeting schedules she'd quietly tracked. She pieced them together and a pattern emerged, an organized strategic campaign long in motion. At breakfast under the pale summer sun, Camilla held her teacup without sipping. Her eyes were glued to the Times spread before her, a front-page photo of Catherine, the Princess of Wales, radiant in a soft blue dress, waving to a Manchester crowd. The bold headline read, "Kate, the new icon of royal compassion." She flipped to the next paper. The Guardian. Kate again cradling a disabled child at a Liverpool charity. The Telegraph covered her unannounced 3-hour visit with nurses at a mental health hospital. Camilla said nothing, but a cold wave surged within her. Never had a presence been so pervasive. Never had an image been so meticulously crafted. For a week, every day, every major outlet, Kate. Not just news, but reverence, praise, near sanctification. Back at Clarence House, Camilla ordered her internal media team to compile all of the Princess of Wales's recent activities. The report spanned nearly 20 pages, photos, captions, and media impact analyses. Camilla read slowly, line by line. Something was wrong. Every image was flawless, perfect lighting, impeccable staging speeches, polished yet emotional. Her wardrobe wasn't just stylish, it was strategic. Colors matched each event's symbolism. Accessories echoed Diana. This isn't spontaneous, Camilla whispered to herself. This is a campaign. She turned to the final page. The appendix listed photographers, editors, and an independent PR consultant. Hugh Somerton's name appeared 3 times. He'd worked with Diana post-divorce. Once again, the past cast its shadow. This time it wore Kate's face. Camilla sat alone in her reading room, staring at her oil portrait from her first year as queen consort, a testament to her triumph through patience and duty despite public disdain. Now she felt replaced silently. No one criticized her. No one demanded her withdrawal. But every headline, every gaze, every accolade, all turned to a younger, more graceful woman, molded more deliberately than anyone in this new royal generation. Camilla felt herself being edged out of power's center. That evening at a joint charity gala, she watched Kate from afar. Kate smiled effortlessly, conversed with finesse, shook hands impeccably. Does she know, Camilla wondered? Does she know she's a pawn in recreating an old icon? Or worse, was Kate not a pawn, but a willing player? Camilla wasn't sure. Kate had always been poised, kind, never overstepping, but that very restraint made her more wary. She'd once seen Kate as an ally, a balance to William's impulsiveness and the fickle media. But now Kate's new radiance cast a warning shadow back at Camilla. Camilla looked away from the gala. In her mind, the pieces aligned. William cut her staff. William brought in his mother's allies. And now William was crafting his wife into the people's queen, a perfect echo of Diana. The chessboard was set, and Camilla, despite herself, was being pushed to the margins. Clarence House was eerily quiet that morning. No familiar click of Annabelle's heels on the marble corridor. No scent of her rich Italian coffee wafting through their morning briefings. Annabelle was gone, silently, as if she'd known some truths must be passed on in quiet, no farewells, no parting glances. Camilla opened the study door, the room where she and Annabelle had debated for hours, from dress choices, for tours to countering vicious headlines. Today it was chillingly still. On the ebony desk lay a large cream envelope sealed with red wax, Annabelle's sign of utmost gravity. Camilla sat slowly opening it. Inside was a thick dossier marked by hand with red underlines, and Annabelle's distinctive slanted notes. The first page was an unpublished budget allocation. Camilla scanned it, her eyes catching anomalies. Sharp increases for Kate's media campaigns. Steep cuts to Camilla's internal logistics teams. She didn't need to be a financial expert to see it. This was deliberate redirection. She moved to the next section, a black and white printout with a blurred header. Private schedule. Palace Media Office. A series of meetings. Familiar names, but the location stood out. Not royal conference rooms, but a private PR firm in Notting Hill. This broke protocol. All royal-funded media strategies stayed in-house. Outsourcing, especially with Kate's senior aides and press secretaries, was a breach. Finally, Annabelle's handwritten notes. I believe your instincts are right. They're not just changing, they're rewriting the system. William's aligning with old allies, and Kate seems more aware than we thought. I tried to hold my ground, but when they cut me out, it means you need to prepare. This is for you to decide, endure or fight back. Camilla set down her pen. She didn't cry. Tears had dried long ago after years of being sidelined, diminished, replaced by a public-friendly face. But this time emotion didn't drive her. She neatly stacked the papers, locked them in a leather case, and called her private aide. I want to meet George Bracken, the budget analyst from the Queen's era. She stood, her gray-green coat draping lightly over her shoulders. Her silver hair was neatly pinned. The game was no longer about reputation or feelings. It was a true chess match, and Camilla had just made her first move. The Western meeting room at Buckingham Palace was bathed in dim light filtered through aged stained-glass windows. Charles sat alone at the head of a long, red-draped table, staring at Camilla's handwritten note. Just 2 lines. I don't need apologies. I need a choice. His hand trembled slightly as he held his glass. Lately, headaches plagued him, not from age, but from the exhaustion of being a king in a fractured family. Camilla no longer kept her diplomatic distance. She named the issues, demanded accountability, and subtly warned if he didn't act, she would. At 2 o'clock, Princess Anne arrived unannounced. She tapped the doorframe and entered with her usual calm resolve, no pleasantries needed. I hear Camilla has enough to shake the media, Anne said plainly. And I hear William's holding meetings even you, the king, aren't informed about. Charles sighed, rubbing his forehead. I don't want to make things worse, Anne. Not now. Anne crossed her arms, pausing, as if weighing whether to press on. Then softly, the problem is, things are already worse, Charles, and no one's waiting for the right time anymore. She pulled a thin envelope from her coat and set it on the table. Inside was a copy of an internal petition signed by senior royals supporting William's deep reform of palace operations and reducing roles lacking strong public symbolism. Camilla wasn't named, but everyone knew who it targeted. Charles held the petition, his heart heavy as stone. He felt less like a monarch and more like a mediator in a family tearing itself apart. On one side, Camilla, his chosen wife, defended through half a lifetime. On the other, William, his heir, England's hope after Elizabeth's passing. And between them, he was a king growing ever more alone. When Anne left, Charles walked slowly to the large window overlooking the south garden, where Diana once read, where Camilla once laughed, splashing water at scampering corgis. Those memories now faded into disjointed fragments. The women he'd loved stood at opposite ends of a conflict he could no longer control. Maybe Mother was right, he muttered. Being king isn't just ruling, it's enduring. Night fell, and Clarence's house was unnaturally silent. Charles lay beside an empty pillow. Camilla hadn't slept in their shared bed for 3 nights. Not out of anger, but preparation for something greater. He knew she was planning, gathering, cross-referencing, refining details. When Camilla was quietest, she was most dangerous. He closed his eyes, but his mind swirled with William's resolute gaze, his sharp words, and Camilla's burning stare, carrying something he couldn't name. He'd thought he could keep both. Now he understood a choice was coming, and its cost might be losing one forever. The scandal broke on a drizzly night when London slept soundly after rare sunny days. In Clarence House's ancient study, Camilla sat alone at the ebony desk lamplight, casting shadows on her still face, not calm but far from at peace. Before her lay 3 large envelopes, each holding a piece of truth. Backstage photos, internal emails, and a budget signed by William redirecting funds to Kate's campaigns in ways that defied protocol. These weren't gathered overnight. They were the fruit of weeks of tracking, cross-checking, and sleepless patience honed through years of surviving media storms and public scorn. Camilla no longer felt anger. It had long been replaced by something colder, sharper, a survivor's instinct forged through being vilified as the other woman yet rising to the throne. She didn't seek publicity. She didn't speak out. She simply let the pieces leak to the right places, 3 major outlets, each receiving a fragment, ensuring no one held the full puzzle, but all had enough to send the same message: something was deeply wrong with William's reforms. 2 days later, the UK was ablaze. The media exploded like a winter storm in July. Print, TV, radio, social media, no platform stood apart. Headlines screamed royal budget, manipulated image campaign, or purge. Catherine's media funds exceed palace norms. Camilla's allies sideline coincidence. The public began questioning, and no one could stop it. Morning talk shows hosted political analysts, budget experts, even former palace advisors, all circling one point: blatant favoritism toward Kate paid for by quietly dismantling Camilla's loyal network. A veteran Guardian journalist didn't hold back. At stake isn't just a budget, it's the monarchy's constitutional neutrality and transparency. Under mounting pressure, Kate's name was thrust into the storm's eye. Her perfect photos from public engagements, flawless dresses, impeccable smiles became fodder for mockery. In Adelaide Cottage's softly lit room, Kate clutched her phone, unable to scroll further. Her heart raced, not from shame, but from utter confusion. She hadn't known. She'd never asked about budgets, never signed contracts, never sought favoritism. William's office had arranged everything. She'd only done her part, meeting people, listening, smiling as her role demanded. When William entered, her eyes brimmed with worry. She set the phone down, saying softly, "I didn't know. I really didn't know it came to this." William was silent for a moment. His eyes were deep, his face taut. No warmth, no outburst, just a chilling calm. "I know you didn't," he said slowly. "And you don't need to. I'll handle it." Kate sat still, but the reassurance she once felt was gone. This wasn't a media mishap. It was a crisis, and she unwittingly had become its face. As William left, he muttered, "My stepmother's made her move. No shouting, no smashing objects." But inside, a rage simmered at its peak. He understood Camilla had struck at the perfect moment, tapping the public's pulse, hitting his weakest point: image. Not the throne, not power. Image, the one thing he'd believed could free him from his mother's shadow. What enraged him most wasn't the attack. It was that he couldn't retaliate openly. Camilla was queen consort, his father's wife. The public wouldn't forgive a direct strike, not now. He was bound by the very ideal heir image he'd spent years crafting. and Camilla knew it. He stood by the window watching rain fall steadily on the wet lawn. He felt cornered in a war where his opponent was steps ahead. For the first time in years, he didn't control the game. After the budget scandal's shockwaves, the palace felt like a fortress under internal siege. Kate's public engagements were paused. Royal social media accounts went quiet. Any defenses came in the monotone voice of a spokesperson, neutral, lifeless, hollow. For Kate, the crisis wasn't confined to headlines. It festered within her, a nameless doubt growing hourly, daily, like a silent tumor poised to erupt. Since joining the royal family, she'd believed everything was meticulously planned, principled, deliberate. Her tour speeches, even candid media photos, all part of a grand design. She'd complied without complaint, trusting she was part of a modernized yet value-driven monarchy. But the budget leak exposed shadows she'd never been told about. She quietly reviewed old documents, forwarded emails, media plans. Many initiatives she thought came from charities were William's direct orders. Campaigns she believed were public-driven were staged. Worst of all, budgets she'd never approved bore her name as the beneficiary. A quiet fear gripped her. Was she merely a molded figure? A living symbol, smiling on cue, dressed in curated colors, posing for flashes while true decisions lay elsewhere? She needed answers. Not from William. From the one person who'd stepped out of his shadow, Camilla. Their meeting wasn't on any official schedule, held in a discreet Windsor Castle room. Camilla arrived 5 minutes early, her usual calm tinged with a deeper melancholy, as if she'd foreseen this moment. Kate entered, her eyes no longer those of a docile princess, but of a woman questioning her own life. "I need to know about the recent campaigns. The budgets. Was it all William's doing?" Camilla didn't answer immediately. She poured tea for both her movements, deliberate, as if stretching time for a painful unburdening. Then she met Kate's gaze, her voice soft but direct. Yes, it was him. All of it was William's plan. And you were its centerpiece. No anger in her tone, just a stark acknowledgement, like a weary mother abandoning hope of changing anyone stating the final truth. Kate frozen. "I thought everything was agreed internally, transparent, vetted. I was just doing my part." Camilla shook her head. "You thought that because you lived the role they gave you, but you were never allowed to see beyond it." In that moment, Kate felt everything collapse. Not from deceit, but from having believed lived fully for something not wholly true. Her trust in her husband, the institution, the ideal shattered in a single simple confirmation. Camilla watched the young woman, her gaze blending pity and warning. She'd been like Kate once, standing beside an ambitious man, thinking it enough to stay in the background. But truth eventually surfaces, and then one either rises or remains forever in their assigned role. You want to believe in William. But if it's all calculated, is the love between you real or part of the plan? The question hung unanswered. Kate didn't seek an answer anymore. For the first time in her royal life, she knew what it felt like to break from within. Buckingham Palace's air that morning was thick as if the walls themselves braced for impact. Footsteps slowed. Servants in the western wing were dismissed. A private, urgent, highly sensitive meeting was about to unfold. It was Princess Anne, ever the neutral pillar, who spoke up. Not with anger or retaliation, but with cold clarity. She saw the chaos spilling beyond the palace gates, flooding media, parliament, social platforms, and aristocratic whispers. No one could maintain their position without clarity. This was no longer internal. It was a crisis of the crown. The meeting was closed with only 5 present: Charles the King, Camilla the Queen Consort, William and Kate the heir and his wife, and Anne, the rare figure trusted by both sides. No one spoke as the door shut. A silence stretched, tightening like a noose around each throat. Camilla broke it first, not loudly, not bitterly. She opened her leather case, placed a small recorder on the table, and pressed play. "We'll gradually phase Camilla out of public statements. She doesn't need to vanish, but she should fade. The media will pivot to Kate, more palatable, less controversial. William's voice, clear, calm, intentional." No one breathed. Kate turned to her husband, eyes wide. Charles closed his. Anne's fingers twitched slightly. William raised his head. "Yes, I said that, and I stand by it. He looked straight at Camilla, unflinching. You used the press to pressure the system I'm reforming. You leaked budgets, created a trust crisis. You're acting like a politician guarding her seat, not a queen serving the nation. Camilla didn't reply. Her gaze held no anger, only a detached disappointment. I don't need to be the people's queen, she said, but I won't be buried to prop up another generation through deceit and manipulation. The room's tension cracked, but the first to break wasn't the adversaries, it was Kate. You used me, her voice choked. You used my image, my every gesture, every visit to craft a second Diana I didn't agree to. I didn't want to be loved for resembling someone else. I wanted to be loved for me. William opened his mouth, but Kate turned away. Charles opened his eyes. He looked at his wife, his son, his daughter-in-law. They were no longer the public's polished images. They were unraveling before him, and he, though king, couldn't mend the fragments with power. Anne, the silent witness, placed her hand on the table. A decision is needed. Either back the reformed monarchy, giving William full control, or uphold tradition and the Queen's honor becomes the line. All eyes turned to Charles. He said nothing. He couldn't, and that was his answer. The heavy door closed behind the last to leave, leaving an unfillable void. Anne remained unnoticed. No one asked, and perhaps no one cared to. She surveyed the room that had just witnessed a life-or-death clash between stepmother and son, husband and wife, past and future. The tea was cold, the recorder silent, but its echoes lingered like smoke from an unquenched fire. Anne was steadfast. She'd endured her parents' divorce, Diana's sudden death, Elizabeth's passing milestones that seemed insurmountable. But never had the royal family felt so shredded. Camilla cold but wounded, William driven but blind, Kate fractured in silence, Charles a king too weary to hold the neutral shield. Anne saw no right or wrong side, only individuals each bearing a wound and a weapon. She clenched her fist lightly, feeling a stark truth. The monarchy was cracking, and this time no one had the authority to mend it. Anne was never one to falter, but now she exhaled deeply, asking herself, when love, vengeance, and doubt pile like this, how can anything remain whole? No one answered. Perhaps even history was silent. If you're hooked on the royal backstage secrets and don't want to miss the next dramatic twist, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to follow the story's next chapter.